The narrative begins with a truly remarkable turn of events, one that challenges common perceptions of vulnerability and heroism. It asks a compelling question: what happens when an individual, at the very twilight of their life, becomes the unexpected force that brings a reign of terror to an end? This is the extraordinary account of a 91-year-old woman who turns the tables on a serial killer during a brutal home invasion, transforming herself from a potential victim into a pivotal figure in his capture. Her story is a testament to an unexpected resilience, a moment where courage, despite advanced age, decisively confronts malevolent intent. The setting for this improbable act of bravery was a quiet, unassuming Dallas retirement community. It was here that we are introduced to Mary Bartel, a resident whose daily life unfolded with a distinct blend of routine and quiet determination. Born in an earlier era and having lived through nearly a century of change, Mary was far from frail or forgetful. She was, by all accounts, a remarkably smart individual, possessing a sharp wit and a keen observational ability that had served her well throughout her long life. Her mind remained clear, her intellect undimmed by the passage of decades. Despite her advanced age, Mary was described consistently by those who knew her as exceptionally spirited. She maintained an active interest in the world around her, engaging in conversations, reading widely, and participating in community activities within the retirement complex. Her demeanor was characterized by a quiet zest for life, an enduring energy that defied the physical limitations often associated with her years. She was a woman who approached each day with purpose, embracing the small joys and challenges of her existence. Furthermore, Mary Bartel was profoundly independent. She managed her own affairs, maintained her own living space, and made her own decisions, valuing her autonomy above all else. This fierce independence was a defining characteristic, shaping her daily routines and her approach to life's unexpected turns. It was this ingrained self-reliance that would later prove crucial in a moment of extreme duress. Above all, Mary was remarkably alert. Her senses were sharp, her attention to detail precise. She noticed things others might overlook, processed information quickly, and retained facts with impressive clarity. This mental acuity, combined with her spirited nature and independence, presented a profile far removed from any stereotype of elderly frailty. She was a vigilant presence, a woman fully engaged with her surroundings, and it was precisely these qualities that would allow her to respond with extraordinary effectiveness when confronted by an unimaginable threat. Her story is not merely one of survival, but of active resistance, a stark example of how inner strength can manifest in the most unexpected of circumstances. The quiet, predictable rhythm of life within the Dallas retirement community, a rhythm Mary Bartel had come to appreciate, was shattered abruptly one evening. It was a time when the last light of dusk faded into the deeper hues of night, and most residents settled into their evening routines, feeling secure within the confines of their homes. For Mary, this meant a period of quiet reflection, perhaps reading or listening to the gentle hum of the evening. However, on this particular night, the tranquility of her well-ordered world was violently and unexpectedly breached. One evening, Mary Bartel found herself violently attacked in her own home. The intrusion was sudden, brutal, and without warning. The perpetrator, a man who would later be identified as Billy Chemirmir, gained unauthorized entry into her apartment. The method of entry was swift and decisive, designed to maximize surprise and minimize any chance of resistance. The initial moments of the attack were characterized by chaos and overwhelming force. Mary, caught completely off guard, was subjected to a sudden, physical assault that left her disoriented and injured. This was not a tentative break-in. It was a targeted, aggressive act, immediately establishing the attacker's menacing intent. The sanctity of her personal space, the very essence of her independence, was violated in a terrifying instant. The intruder's actions immediately conveyed a sinister purpose. His behavior was not that of a common burglar seeking valuables to fence. Instead, his focus was directly on Mary, his aggression clear and unambiguous. The intent was not merely theft. It was deeper, far more terrifying. The intruder's actions indicated a clear intent to kill or kidnap. He employed methods designed to incapacitate quickly, to silence any outcry, and to gain complete control over his elderly victim. The violence inflicted upon Mary was calculated, aimed at ensuring her submission, and preventing her from raising an alarm or defending herself. This was a deliberate act of profound malice, executed with chilling efficiency. The attacker exhibited a chilling disregard for human life, his actions driven by a predatory objective that went far beyond material gain. The man responsible for this horrifying invasion, the individual who shattered Mary's peace and threatened her very existence, was identified later as Billy Chemirmir. At the time of the attack, Mary had no knowledge of his identity or the dark pattern of his crimes. He was simply a menacing presence, a figure of terror who had violently intruded into her safe haven. Chemirmir, a man whose public persona often belied his true nature, operated with a predatory cunning, choosing his victims with deliberation and striking with swift brutality. His selection of Mary's home indicated a strategic approach, likely based on reconnaissance of the retirement community and the perceived vulnerability of its residents. He sought to exploit the trust and assumed safety of elderly individuals, turning their homes into zones of terror. To fully convey the horror of this moment, the narrative shifts to a heightened perspective, utilizing descriptive elements designed to amplify the intense stakes. Point-of-view visuals, if present, would immerse the viewer directly into Mary's experience, recreating the sudden disorientation, the terrifying proximity of the assailant, and the desperate struggle for breath and control. These visuals would focus on the immediate, visceral sensations of the attack, the sudden blur of movement, the overwhelming force, the claustrophobic confinement, and the terrifying realization of mortal danger. The camera might simulate Mary's limited visibility, the blurred edges of her vision, and the disorienting physical impact of the assault. Alongside these visual elements, the narration would align with the building, tense atmospheric sound design. While not including explicit music markers in the script, the intended effect would be to amplify the horror of the moment through the narrative's tension. This palpable tension would build from the initial breach to the violent confrontation, culminating in the critical seconds where Mary's life hung precariously in the balance. The narrative focuses on the raw, immediate terror of the home invasion, the shock of betrayal, and the profound vulnerability Mary experienced. Yet, even in this moment of extreme duress, the foundation for her extraordinary resistance was being laid, a testament to an indomitable spirit that refused to yield to the terror. The initial moments of the attack were a battle for survival, a desperate struggle against a brutal, determined assailant. And it was in these dire circumstances that Mary Bartel's remarkable courage and quick thinking would unexpectedly emerge. The violent intrusion into Mary Bartel's home, the brutal physical attack by an unseen assailant, placed her in a situation of profound, immediate peril. The initial shock and disorientation of the assault were overwhelming, threatening to consume her. Yet, even as her body registered the pain and her mind grappled with the terror, something primal within Mary refused to yield. Despite the inherent disadvantages of her age and the suddenness of the assault, her lifelong spirit of independence and her sharp wits, honed over 9 decades, ignited a remarkable, unexpected resistance. This was not a passive acceptance of fate. It was an active, desperate fight for survival, a testament to an indomitable will. Despite her injuries, which were significant and inflicted by a much younger, stronger attacker, Mary Bartel refused to freeze. The pain from the initial blows might have crippled a lesser individual, but for Mary, it seemed to sharpen her focus. Her 91 years had taught her the importance of resilience, of navigating adversity with practicality and quick thinking. In the chaos of the struggle, with the attacker attempting to subdue her and silence her cries, Mary's mind raced, searching for any opportunity, any advantage, no matter how small. Her attacker was focused on overpowering her, on controlling her movements, perhaps underestimating the inner strength of his elderly victim. This underestimation proved to be his critical misjudgment and Mary's key opportunity. In a moment of extraordinary quick thinking, Mary's hand instinctively reached out, desperately grasping for anything within her immediate reach. Her fingers closed around a seemingly innocuous object, a pen. This was not a weapon in the traditional sense, but in Mary's quick-witted hands, it became a tool of resistance and, crucially, a silent witness. Without hesitation, and driven by an acute awareness that she needed to leave an undeniable mark, she used the pen with surprising force and precision. She jammed it into her attacker's body, not necessarily to inflict severe injury, but with a specific, deliberate intent to create a lasting physical trace. The small, sharp tip of the pen broke off upon impact, embedding itself in the attacker's skin or clothing. This was an act born not of blind panic, but a calculated, desperate strategy to mark the attacker with evidence that could later identify him. It was a fleeting, pivotal moment, a minuscule act of defiance that would ultimately prove to be the linchpin in a much larger investigation. The remnant of the pen, now physically transferred to the assailant, was a silent testament to Mary's courage and foresight, a piece of forensic gold in the chaos of a home invasion. The struggle continued, fiercely and intensely. Mary, weakened by age and injury, mustered every ounce of her strength, refusing to succumb. She pushed, she pulled, she thrashed, creating as much disruption as possible. This sustained struggle was a testament to her sheer will to live, a desperate battle for autonomy against a determined aggressor. Her resistance, even without overwhelming physical strength, complicated the attacker's efforts. He had likely anticipated a compliant, easily subdued victim. Instead, he encountered fierce, unexpected opposition. Mary's continued fight created a chaotic scene, forcing the attacker to expend more energy and time than he had likely planned. The unexpected resistance, the persistent struggle from a nonagenarian, clearly frustrated the assailant and introduced an element of risk into his calculated attack. He found himself engaged in a more prolonged and visible confrontation than he had intended, increasing the chances of discovery or identification. Ultimately, whether due to Mary's unexpected resilience, the unexpected time the struggle consumed, or a sudden external noise, the attacker's plan was disrupted. The intrusion ended abruptly when he fled the scene, escaping into the night as suddenly as he had appeared. He left Mary injured, shaken, but alive, and crucially, he left behind a crucial, unseen piece of himself, a direct consequence of Mary's courageous resistance. The terrifying ordeal was over, at least a moment, but Mary Bartel's ordeal had served a higher purpose. These actions, born from a desperate fight for survival, left behind crucial evidence that would be directly tied to his eventual capture. First and foremost, the pen remnants, the small piece of the pen that had broken off and become lodged on or within the attacker, were invaluable. This tangible forensic trace would provide a direct link to the perpetrator, a silent but irrefutable piece of proof. Second, Mary's remarkable presence of mind, even under extreme duress, meant she retained the ability to describe him with astonishing accuracy. Despite the horror, she observed details: his build, aspects of his clothing, and the general characteristics of his demeanor. Her eyewitness account, remarkably precise for someone her age who had just endured a traumatic assault, would become a vital composite that would guide law enforcement in their search. These pieces of evidence, forged in a moment of terror and defiance, created an undeniable pathway for the police. Mary Bartel's courageous and resourceful response not only saved her own life, but also laid the groundwork for the eventual apprehension of a dangerous individual, transforming her into an unwitting but indispensable witness against a serial offender. Her fight was not just for her own survival, but for justice that would ripple far beyond her quiet retirement community. Mary Bartel's courageous resistance, born from an innate will to survive, had yielded something invaluable in the chaotic aftermath of the home invasion: critical evidence. Her physical defiance, the seemingly minor act of embedding a pen remnant in her attacker, coupled with her remarkably precise observations, provided law enforcement with crucial starting points. The local police department, now facing a violent assault within the perceived safety of a retirement community, immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. This was no longer a matter of a simple home invasion. The unique circumstances surrounding the attack, and Mary's unshakable resolve, signaled something far more sinister. The initial phase of the investigation centered on Mary's testimony. Detectives arrived at her home, not just to document the crime, but to carefully, patiently listen to her account. Despite the trauma she had endured, Mary recounted the events with astonishing clarity. She described the attacker's general build, his approximate height, and key details about his clothing. Crucially, she articulated the deliberate act of fighting back and attempting to mark him. The detectives, trained to recognize the reliability of a clear, coherent narrative, understood the immense value of her detailed recollections. Her description went beyond generalities. It included specific characteristics of the assailant's presence, his movements, and even the subtle nuances of his struggle. This eyewitness account, from a nonagenarian who had just faced a life-threatening ordeal, was precise and consistent, forming a foundational pillar for the burgeoning investigation. As Mary's testimony was meticulously documented, investigators concurrently initiated a thorough canvass of the retirement community and its surrounding areas, looking for any corroborating evidence. This led them to potential digital leads. They focused heavily on CCTV footage from security cameras positioned throughout the retirement community grounds, at building entrances, and from nearby businesses or residential surveillance systems. Hours of footage were painstakingly reviewed, frame by frame. Detectives scoured the recordings for any unusual activity on the night of the attack, an unfamiliar vehicle, a figure moving suspiciously, or any individual entering or exiting the premises around the time of the home invasion. This tedious but vital work aimed to place a suspect at the scene and provide visual confirmation of Mary's description. The hope was that somewhere within those digital recordings, a clear image of the perpetrator would emerge, or at least a vehicle or direction of travel that could be tracked. The combination of Mary's vivid account and the initial review of available surveillance footage immediately began to narrow the field of potential suspects. However, the most compelling piece of forensic evidence stemmed directly from Mary's quick thinking. The search for the pen trace became a priority. Crime scene technicians meticulously scoured Mary's apartment, paying particular attention to the areas where she had struggled with her attacker. They carefully examined fabric remnants, floor surfaces, and any potential points of contact where the small piece of the pen might have been dislodged. The significance of the seemingly minor object was immense. It represented a direct physical link to the assailant, a tangible piece of him left behind due to Mary's courageous defiance. The forensic analysis of this small fragment would be crucial in providing a scientific basis for identification. The diligent work of the police began to converge. Mary's sharp description, combined with the initial visual evidence from CCTV footage and the search for the physical pen remnant, started to paint a clearer picture of the assailant. Detectives compiled a composite sketch based on Mary's eyewitness account and cross-referenced it with existing criminal databases and local intelligence. This methodical approach began to generate leads. It was through this systematic process, triangulating Mary's unwavering testimony with the digital and forensic evidence, that police began to zero in on Chemirmir as a suspect. This process was not a sudden revelation, but a gradual, methodical convergence of evidence points. His physical characteristics, his history of residing or operating in the area, or previous, perhaps unproven, suspicious activities in other contexts, all began to align with the profile emerging from Mary's case. The pen trace, once recovered and analyzed, could then be specifically matched or excluded from known items or individuals, adding another layer of scientific certainty to their developing focus on Chemirmir. The critical breakthrough came when the collected evidence from Mary Bartel's case was cross-referenced with other, seemingly unrelated, suspicious incidents in the Dallas area. There have been a number of unexplained deaths or assaults involving elderly individuals in various retirement communities and private residences, some initially attributed to natural causes or accidental falls. However, the distinct pattern of entry, the specific nature of the assaults, and the age of the victims began to suggest a serial offender. Mary Bartel's detailed description and the unique pen trace provided the missing link, the crucial piece of the puzzle that connected these disparate incidents. This allowed investigators to see a broader, more terrifying pattern of predatory behavior, a chilling realization that a serial attacker had been operating undetected, preying on the most vulnerable members of society. Mary Bartel's courageous resistance had not only saved her own life, but had also provided the precise, invaluable evidence needed to expose a hidden threat and bring a dangerous serial predator into the harsh light of justice. Her quick thinking transformed an isolated home invasion into the pivotal moment that would ultimately unravel a series of interconnected crimes. The meticulous investigation sparked by Mary Bartel's defiance had yielded a critical breakthrough, moving beyond the isolated incident in her apartment to reveal a much larger, horrifying pattern. The focus now shifted squarely to Billy Chemirmir, the man Mary had so courageously marked, and the chilling array of crimes he committed against other vulnerable individuals. The initial insights gained from Mary's testimony and the burgeoning forensic evidence served as the key that unlocked a dark, hidden chapter of serial predation, revealing a cunning and ruthless individual who had operated undetected for years. Through intensive interviews with investigators and extensive review of existing case files, a sinister narrative began to coalesce, detailing Chemirmir's modus operandi and the full scope of his devastating impact. Detectives methodically revisited cold cases and suspicious deaths involving elderly victims, meticulously searching for similarities to Mary Bartel's attack. They spoke with families who had lost loved ones, some of whom had initially accepted explanations of natural causes or accidental falls, but now, in light of this new evidence, began to see a terrifying pattern. The pattern of his crimes was chillingly consistent and strategically executed, targeting the most vulnerable members of society. Chemirmir's primary method of operation involved posing as an individual of trust and authority, exploiting the inherent good nature and polite disposition of his elderly victims. He frequently posed as an assistant, adopting various deceptive guises to gain access to their homes. This often involved presenting himself as a healthcare worker, a home maintenance technician, a helpful neighbor, or even a police officer. His appearances were often meticulously planned, sometimes following a period of surveillance, during which he would observe the victim's routines and identify moments of vulnerability. He relied on the assumption that an elderly person, perhaps isolated or less physically capable, would be less inclined to question someone presenting themselves as helpful or official. He would sometimes wait outside medical facilities, following elderly patients home after appointments, identifying those who lived alone or had limited support. Once he gained trust or found a way to bypass security, his true intentions would become horrifyingly clear. After gaining entry, or even before, Chemirmir would then establish a veneer of trustworthiness. He was adept at appearing charming, empathetic, or simply innocuous, quickly gaining trust from unsuspecting victims who welcomed him into their homes. This facade of benign assistance allowed him to disarm his targets, preventing them from perceiving him as a threat until it was too late. He would engage them in brief, polite conversation, perhaps offering help with groceries or a minor repair, creating a false sense of security. This manipulation was crucial to his success, allowing him to bypass physical security measures and exploit the natural human tendency to trust those who present themselves as helpful. This carefully cultivated trust was then brutally shattered as he transitioned from apparent helper to violent assailant. Upon gaining full access and disarming his victim, Chemirmir would then proceed to fatally assault other elderly women. The term assault often encompassed a range of brutal acts designed to quickly incapacitate and silence. These were not random acts of violence, but targeted, premeditated attacks. Many of his victims were suffocated, a method often leaving minimal outward signs of struggle, which initially allowed authorities to misclassify some deaths as natural. Others were subjected to physical violence before being killed. His primary objective was to steal their jewelry, cash, and other valuables, which he would then quickly pawn for financial gain. The attacks were characterized by their swiftness and brutality, executed with a chilling lack of remorse. The meticulous re-examination of these previously unsolved cases, now with Mary Bartel's experience as a reference point, began to expose a horrific pattern stretching across multiple Dallas area communities. Each victim, initially seen as an isolated tragedy, was now recognized as part of a larger, terrifying sequence orchestrated by the same hidden predator. The gravity of Chemirmir's crimes was further amplified through the compilation of news footage and reenactments. Historical news segments from the time of the initial unexplained deaths were revisited, showing reporters interviewing concerned family members who had questioned the official explanations of natural causes. These archival clips provided a window into the community's quiet unease and the initial blind spots of the investigation. The reenactments, carefully crafted to reflect police reports and survivor testimonies, visually outlined Chemirmir's chilling methods, showing him knocking on doors, presenting fake identification, engaging victims in disarming conversation, and then in stark, unembellished detail, portraying the sudden, violent transition from helper to assailant. These visual components underscore the calculated nature of his predation, demonstrating how he meticulously exploited trust and vulnerability. Photos of victims, displayed with solemn reverence, added profound gravity to the danger he posed. Each photograph represented a unique life violently extinguished, a family shattered by an unseen force. These images, often of smiling, vibrant elderly women, stood in stark contrast to the brutal circumstances of their deaths, humanizing the statistics and emphasizing the immense loss caused by his actions. Alongside these images, a timeline was meticulously constructed. This visual representation chronicled Chemirmir's known and suspected criminal activities, stretching back years, showing the chilling frequency and geographical spread of his attacks. The timeline illustrated how he moved between different retirement communities and residences, leaving a trail of victims, some of whom were only identified as is due to the breakthrough in Mary Bartel's case. This comprehensive timeline added further weight to the danger he posed, revealing a serial killer who had systematically preyed on the elderly, operating with impunity, until one courageous 91-year-old woman fought back. The culmination of this investigative work presented an undeniable portrait of Billy Chemirmir as a ruthless, prolific serial predator whose reign of terror had been brought to light by an unlikely hero. The overwhelming weight of evidence, meticulously compiled to the tireless efforts of law enforcement, painted an undeniable portrait of Billy Chemirmir as a serial predator. The intricate web woven by Mary Bartel's courageous testimony, combined with digital forensics, witness accounts, and the chilling pattern of his crimes, left no room for doubt. The investigation, which had stretched across multiple jurisdictions and revisited numerous cold cases, now moved with a singular focus towards his apprehension. The culmination of this extensive police work led to a dramatic arrest. Chemirmir was eventually located and taken into custody. The specific circumstances of his capture were a testament to the thoroughness of the investigation. Detectives had likely been tracking his movements, perhaps leveraging surveillance or digital tracing, to ensure his apprehension without further risk to the public. His arrest marked the official end of his reign of terror, a moment of profound relief for the communities he had preyed upon and for the families of his many victims. Once apprehended, police captured him, initiating the formal process of booking and interrogation. The initial phase of questioning would have focused on confronting him with the overwhelming evidence, including Mary Bartel's account and the forensic links to other cases. While the details of his confession, if any, were not made public, the evidence gathered was robust enough to proceed directly to prosecution. Following his arrest, the legal system commenced its arduous process. Court visuals, if available from public records, would illustrate the stark reality of his prosecution. The solemn courtroom setting, the various legal teams involved, and the presence of the victims' families, all awaiting justice. The prosecution meticulously built their case, presenting a comprehensive narrative of Chemirmir's systematic predation. This included the direct evidence from Mary Bartel's assault, the detailed digital forensics outlining his methods, and the harrowing testimonies from the families of his other victims. Each piece of evidence was laid bare, connecting his actions across multiple incidents and demonstrating a clear, consistent pattern of murder and theft targeting vulnerable elderly women. The courtroom became a crucible where the hidden darkness of his crimes was exposed to the light of justice. Throughout the legal proceedings, the pivotal role played by Mary Bartel was consistently highlighted. Featured quotes from police or courtroom clips would underscore her unique contribution to the case. Law enforcement officials, in press conferences or court testimonies, repeatedly emphasized how Mary's actions were the crucial turning point. They articulated how her ability to describe him with such precision, despite the trauma, provided investigators with their initial tangible lead. They highlighted how her quick thinking and marking with the pen left behind the vital forensic evidence that allowed them to connect him to other previously unsolved cases, revealing him as a serial offender. Without Mary's defiant resistance and sharp memory, Chemirmir might have continued his deadly pattern, and many of his previous crimes might have remained unsolved. Her bravery was not just a personal act of survival. It was a profound catalyst for widespread justice, an act of heroism that resonated far beyond her individual experience. The narrative then returns to Mary, as the video emphasizes her heroic resilience. At 91 years old, an age often associated with fragility and dependence, Mary Bartel defied expectations. She did not freeze in the face of extreme danger. Her immediate, instinctive response was to act, to resist, and leave a lasting mark on her attacker. This was a testament to her lifelong spirit of independence and her remarkable mental acuity. Her refusal to passively succumb to the assault, her active struggle, and her deliberate effort to create evidence were extraordinary acts of courage. This resilience not only saved her own life from the clutches of a serial killer, but, more broadly, it played a critical role in saving future victims who would have otherwise fallen prey to Chemirmir. Her actions provided law enforcement with a definitive link they needed to connect him to other unsolved crimes, enabling them to identify and apprehend him before he could harm more innocent individuals. Mary Bartel's courage, therefore, directly brought a serial killer to justice, transforming a personal nightmare into a pivotal moment for public safety and accountability. The story culminates with a powerful closing message, designed to resonate deeply with the audience and offer crucial lessons. The video underlines a fundamental warning that age is never a barrier to bravery. Mary Bartel's story stands as a compelling testament to the fact that heroism can emerge in the most unexpected individuals and in the most challenging circumstances, regardless of physical limitations or societal stereotypes. Her actions illustrate that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences when confronted with adversity, possessing an inner strength and a will to act that can profoundly impact the lives of countless others. The narrative ends by reinforcing the critical theme of vigilance. It serves as a stark reminder that predators often operate with deceptive cunning, preying on trust and perceived vulnerability. It emphasizes the importance of remaining alert, observing unusual patterns, and taking even subtle signs of danger seriously, especially concerning elderly or vulnerable populations. The message underscores the theme of empowerment, highlighting that even in moments of extreme peril, an individual's quick thinking and defiant action can have far-reaching consequences, influencing the course of criminal investigations and saving lives. This story ultimately concludes with a powerful reflection on the surprising impact of one determined individual, reminding society that the quiet strength and unwavering resolve of a single person can indeed change the course of justice, bringing a dangerous criminal to account and preventing future harm. Mary Bartel's story is a compelling testament to the enduring power of human courage in the face of profound evil.
Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more.